Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. Happy Wednesday afternoon. I am Adam Weinrib. Robert Murray is off today, and I am joined instead by Sam Phalen. You've read his content at Southside Showdown. You've read his content across the Fansided MLB network, and you have probably seen him compete on Survivor. And today he is here to talk us through his takes on the September call-ups, the last-minute Major League roster shuffles that we just saw ahead of the playoff roster eligibility deadline, and what it all means, whether the playoff field is already set on September 3rd, how much movement we can expect, and who's going to play the most fun version of spoiler down the stretch. Sam, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, of course. This is the time of year for baseball fans. You know, my White Sox not exactly in the mix. Didn't expect them to be in the mix, but even I find myself getting a lot of use out of my MLB TV subscription this time of year because every game seems to mean something to somebody. So it's a great time to talk ball. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it is very, you feel the chill in the air even before, it's not October, it's September. It theoretically should still feel like summer. It is summer. Like, I know everybody launched their summer's over beach photo, popsicle carousels on Instagram over the weekend, but we've still got a couple weeks left. It shouldn't feel this cold, but it does. It feels like playoff baseball is in the air.
Yeah, something about, college football just started. We've got the NFL coming up this weekend. It is starting to feel like fall, and all of these baseball games as a result start to feel like playoff baseball games, especially for some of the teams we'll talk about today that are on the bubble, maybe, limping into the playoffs or trying to get a last-minute surge to spoil, some contenders postseason.
Yeah, it's a weird bubble this year, and I'd love to get your take on it. Again, everyone, thanks for joining us. 3 o'clock Eastern time every Wednesday afternoon. Robert Murray will be back next week on vacation today. Really glad to be able to have Sam with us. You can't ask for a better fill-in, and we appreciate everybody joining us. Plenty to touch on. We want everyone to join us in the Discord if they are not already there. That's where you can ask Robert and I questions, as well as Eric Cole, our prospect guru. And I say prospect guru on every show now because I said it a couple times. And then I saw an AI summary of the podcast, and it described who's on the podcast. And it was like, Eric Cole, Fansided's prospect guru. And I was like, great, I'm going to keep saying that. I don't know why AI learned that, but it did. So that's what he is. You can bother us between shows on the Discord. Hit the join button. Become a member at either the All-Star tier or the Rumor Mill tier. There will be a private Q&A with Robert. I think we're still on for 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, even though he is hanging out on vacation. But even if we skip tomorrow, we'll be back next week for double opportunities to talk to him and ask him questions. Subscribe to The Moonshot as well, our weekly baseball email newsletter with the Fansided MLB team, including Robert Murray over at the.com. Break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, behind-the-scenes info. You can read all that and more on fansided.com/baseball-insiders. Okay, let's roll with it. Let's roll into the September call-ups, who Eric and I talked about a little bit on the prospect show yesterday. The September 1st slate may be a little light. Obviously we don't expand to the full 40-man rosters anymore, which used to turn these September games between two non-contenders into the absolute dregs, where you just have the most random reliever of all time recording 1 out in the 6th and then getting replaced by another 32-year-old from AAA. And so the rules have shifted. We can't do that anymore. 3 batter minimum and only 2 roster spots. So not the most exciting September 1 call-ups, but plenty of near September call-ups who I think count here when we're talking about who we're most excited to see make an impact, whether that be Bubba Chandler as a spoiler, Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean in New York. I believe that Nolan McLean will face Jacob deGrom next Friday at Citi Field if everything stays lined up. Samuel Basallo up with the Orioles. Is there a September call-up that you are most excited to see make an impact? And do you think any of these players ultimately impact the outcome of the postseason?
Well, I'll tell you one guy who will not impact the outcome of the postseason. I really enjoyed watching Andrew Alvarez pitch, earlier this week. I flipped on that game, just sort of, as background noise, and started to look up and be like, man, this dude's dialed into the strike zone. He's got great control of his arsenal. And you look at a Nationals team that has so many fun young pieces, but I think is still in that stage of their rebuild where they're trying to figure out what's legitimate and what is maybe a flash in the pan. And so I'm interested in seeing how Andrew Alvarez, looks throughout the rest of September here and what that means for the Nationals and their offseason plans as they look to probably take that next step towards contention in 2026. But you mentioned the 2 big ones for me. I can't get away from the NL East. Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean are the two guys that I do think will impact the postseason race. Like when I look at the National League wild card race right now, and you look at a couple of teams trying to chase down the New York Mets and a red hot San Francisco Giants team, a Reds team that's sort of been struggling to find their groove despite having a window of opportunity open to them. I think that race is over. That race is really over because of Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean and what they bring to a Mets pitching staff that was otherwise pretty underwhelming before this. But these two kids come up, the 5 starts combined, they're 5-0, a Mets team that was just brutal after the trade deadline and maybe regretting a lot of their decisions at that deadline, are 11-6 over their last 17. So I like the Mets here on out. And with Juan Soto heating up, Pete Alonso's hitting a home run every other day, it seems like. If they can get a little bit of stability from some of these young starting pitchers, I think the Mets can not only make the postseason, but actually make some noise once they get there.
I think so too. And I think the key with Tong and McLean is that sometimes we've got teams just calling up pitchers or extra added spice to give themselves a little boost or motivation headed towards October. The Mets don't have any other reliable starters. Like the Mets needed these 2 rookies to not just thrive, but survive. Like the Red Sox call up Peyton Tolley, and that makes them better. But the Red Sox also had 3 of the top 5 starting pitchers in the American League in ERA from June 10th to present. Like Lucas Giolito's right up there with the best of the best. So, Tolley helps. He makes them scarier, and he may offset some of the nerves caused by the Roman Anthony injury.
There's an argument to be made here for the Mets that if they were to play in the NLDS today, or even in a wild card series, right, you probably give the ball to like Clay Holmes in game 1. Kodai is certainly in the mix. You could make an argument that your game 3, game 4 starters have to be Tong and McLean here, and that you would skip over a David Peterson and, give these guys the ball right now. They're throwing it better than your veterans on this pitching staff. And so they give the Mets, I think, a lot of different options in the postseason. And I think, Adam, maybe it's the romantic in me. I like to think that sometimes you just call up a rookie and you throw them in the postseason, and they don't even understand the magnitude necessarily of what they're doing. And we might just get Nolan McLean absolutely shoving against the Dodgers one day in an NL wild card series, not even realizing exactly how big the game that he's pitching is to the people, in Queens.
It's highly probable, and it cannot be overstated what a huge upgrade he is and Tong is over Frankie Montas and the likes of people the Mets were recently throwing out there. Frankie Montas, the rare double dipper despised by fans of both New York franchises. It's really hard to get to that level, but by God, he did it. And you wonder how much of it was David Stern's. Look, I don't want to give too much credit for what seems like a really happy accident, but you wonder how much of his offseason tinkering with the pitching staff and these bounce back candidates and lack of sure things was just sort of thinking, I probably have Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong in reserve by mid-August, and I could probably pull something like this off just when everyone is the angriest at me. I don't know what to credit him for, but I agree with you. McLean shoving in the wild card series doesn't just feel like a distinct possibility. It feels like the most likely outcome.
Yeah. I've seen it a million times already in my brain of, he's just been unbelievable. And I think a lot of people, heard his name for the first time when he's, called up, just a few weeks ago. But I think over the next few months, Nolan McLean certainly going to make himself a household name for a lot of baseball fans out there that maybe haven't watched the Mets so far in 2025.
Now, what about the major leaguers who changed hands right ahead of that same deadline? I don't know. I mean, look, the waiver wire every year, I think we get a little too obsessed with the waiver wire. And also every year there are some, since they eliminated the trade deadline that sent Justin Verlander to Houston and where you could really make impactful moves, I think we get a little obsessed partially because of the Angels putting that massive cavalcade of names. I think a lot of players get placed on the waiver wire and don't get claimed every year, but then you do have a handful. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Andrew Heaney actually gets the DFA axe. Walker Buehler does too. Carlos Santana goes to the Cubs. Bit of an odd fit, but a respected veteran who you could put in pretty much any postseason game and he'd look as comfortable as Nolan McLean in a hypothetical. But do you have any thoughts on these dudes who changed hands, the veterans we already know and love? And if any of them can genuinely move the needle, we are talking about players who are by and large having pretty bad seasons.
Yeah. I actually do like Carlos Santana with the Cubs. Yeah, that is one that stood out to me when I look at the Cubs over the last couple of months and sort of the roller coaster that they've been on, from feeling at the highest of highs, leading the NL Central early, to just the red hot Brewers, kicking the Cubs when they're down over and over again. And Kyle Tucker goes through his big slump where nobody really knows what's going on. And Pete Crow Armstrong, has he had a home run in the last 3 weeks? Like, what is happening there? Seiya Suzuki's got all of 8 RBIs since the All-Star break. When I was last on here, Adam, waxing poetic about how Seiya needed to be on the NL All-Star roster. Mm-hmm. He hasn't done much for the Cubs in the second half. So I love the addition of a Carlos Santana in just like a consistent at bat. I know the production hasn't been there for him as much as he would have liked in 2025. But this is a guy who has incredible understanding of the strike zone. He gives you a good competitive at bat. He takes his walks. He can, when he's locked in, can strike for a little bit of power. And I think that level of stability and that veteran presence is really what the Cubs need, as Kyle Tucker has sort of come out of his slump recently, as they've gotten more contributions from an Ian Happ and a Matt Shaw and a Dansby Swanson, and the ball is starting to fly out of Wrigley Field. Carlos Santana is a guy that I like there. And as you said, he's been in 6 MLB postseasons. He's an experienced veteran on those big stages. So, a lot of these Cubs players have not. And Carlos Santana gives them, it's almost what they were going for and what Jed Hoyer was trying to do with like the Justin Turner edition. I just think Carlos Santana maybe does it a little bit better than Justin Turner does.
Yeah, that's what's funny. It felt redundant to some Cubs fans, I think, but if they really step back and look at what's going on, they'll probably realize that he's more equipped than Justin Turner to play the role. I'm going to do an impression of the kind of thing I hate to hear in media, but I also can't stop believing it myself. So I'm going to say a thing I'd hate to hear if someone else was saying it, but I'm saying it, so I can't get away from it. I just can't quit Walker Buehler here.
Yeah.
I hate when people are just like, he's got like a 5.5 ERA. He's been bad all year. And I hate when people just get on, a major platform and are like, but he knows how to do it in October. And I'm like, get real, shut up. But also, we watched him put up a 5.5 ERA last year during the regular season. And
we remember when he went 16-4 with the Dodgers, and that'll get us back in.
That fool put up a terrible regular season last year, had me thinking like, well, it's just over for him post Tommy John. He's not the same guy. He goes to Citi Field and shuts down the Mets in the NLCS. He goes to Yankee Stadium, the World Series game that I paid redacted amount of money to attend, shuts down the Yankees and puts the Dodgers up 3-0 and then closes out the World Series. And so when he signs with the Red Sox this offseason, I'm like, say what you will about the Garrett Crochet trade and Aroldis Chapman, but Buehler is the shrewd move that's going to be the difference maker. And then it turns out every other Red Sox edition has been great. Makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. Buehler was terrible all year. And now he goes to Philadelphia, another sports-obsessed, baseball-obsessed town with loud, great fans. And so help me, I can't quit the reality that he's going to make an impact in September and in the playoffs. It doesn't make sense. He's been bad all year. He got demoted to the bullpen in Boston. They hate him there. And yet, I still think he's going to be good.
Because he had, I totally understand where you're coming from. There is a level, especially when you're talking about an arm, that if you have that swing and miss stuff, if we've seen that electric front line, ability in the past, you can't help yourself but, dream about what if, Walker Buehler, even at this stage, even with a bad season, he's capable of striking out 11, and he's capable of doing that against the best if he has his absolute best stuff on the right night. And it would be fitting for a team like the Phillies to just have the bank rocking one night in October and Walker Buehler, absolutely messing around with some poor guy from the Brewers. I don't know. That's totally what would happen. The big bad Brewers with 105 wins going to Citizens Bank Park, and they just get Walker Buehler to death. That's the narrative that we can all see happening.
If people forget that the Phillies World Series team from 2022 had Noah Syndergaard making starts, It doesn't make a lot of sense, but they weren't asking for much out of him. He was going 4 innings, 2 runs, and checking out, and they were fine with that. I can see Walker Buehler playing the same role, and with Zach Wheeler out for the remainder of the season, there are going to be innings to go around. It doesn't make sense. I don't even like that I'm saying it, but I do like that we're aligned on it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that regard. I have a few guys, Noah Syndergaard being one of those guys that I can't seem to quit. I'm still waiting for Johnny Cueto to pop up and make a playoff start here for somebody down the stretch. You never know when Cueto's gonna turn back the clock.
For me, it's like all the dudes. I don't know. Are you like a baseball card collector at all? Or
used to be. I've fallen out of it recently, but I have my fair share of albums in storage for sure.
Yeah, it's all the dudes from like the Bowman sets of my childhood from like 04 to 2010, where I'm still like, are we sure Trevor Cahill isn't like serviceable?
Yeah. I keep thinking we're going to get some sort of vintage year from Irvin Santana, and he's just going to lock somebody down in the playoffs, because I've seen it a few times and I can't get the image burned out of my memory. It's just in there for good.
Yeah, I think Jake Arrieta's doing Home Run Derby X,
Yep.
but what if he wanted to go pitch for a contender?
I mean, I unironically do think Zach Greinke could probably sign a contract tomorrow and be ready to lock somebody up in the postseason. I could see that one happening realistically.
Yeah, Zach Greinke could immediately pull a David Cohn against Mike Piazza in the 2000 World Series. Just one at bat, exit stage right. It could definitely occur.
Yeah.
You foreshadowed something I'm definitely worried about, which is a Brewers team that is sort of the darling of the postseason field, going to a more battle-tested opponent and playing tough road games at Citizens Bank or Dodger Stadium, and not looking like the Brewers we've seen all year. Talking about that playoff bubble earlier, look at the current field. There's some distance between almost every team in the postseason field. Again, the Mets are holding off the hard-charging Giants, and the Reds, who could have been hard-charging but kind of aren't. The Mariners are the most obviously vulnerable team. They're letting the Rangers and the Royals and even the Guardians hang around behind them a little bit. The rest sort of feels like just seeding in the Padres and Dodgers. The Padres decimated by Jason Adams' injury and Xander Bogaerts' injury, jockeying for position. Do you feel like, you look at this playoff field right now, do you feel like the competitors are set? Do you think there's any room for the Mariners falling out, or even, I think both of us believe in the Mets, but
yeah,
any big time shuffles to upset the apple cart, or is this pretty much what we're dealing with?
So I think there is 2 things that stick out to me. Number one, it's not going to shuffle the playoff teams in the American League, but the Detroit Tigers, who started this season the best team in the American League by far and seemed like a lock to get one of those buys in the American League and get to avoid that wild card round, they have really been sort of disappointing me with how they've played baseball over the last couple of months. And I look at where they sit right now, just sort of 4 games up or 3.5 games up on the Houston Astros. The Astros, hate them, love them. Most people hate them instead of love them. But they've been here before. They've been in these sort of pennant chases. No matter how many times they overturn their roster, this is an Astros team now with Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve and, guys who have played in these big games. I have a hard time seeing the Astros not running down the Detroit Tigers. I think the Tigers will end up in that wild card series, and the Astros will get one of those buys because it feels inevitable. And then I'm going to look at the one that you said, the most mathematically possible one. But the Rangers have been a sleeping giant to me for most of the season. We know that this team is World Series caliber because it's a lot of the same names that won a World Series just a few years ago. They had a big disappointing year last year, but they still have the manager. They still have a lot of the superstar names. As they get healthier, as they start to heat up, as the Seattle Mariners don't close that door all the way and leave it cracked, now the Rangers are a 1.5 games back, and I think right now on paper they have a better team. So it would be so devastating in a year where Cal Raleigh might hit 55 home runs and, has a great case to win the AL MVP award. And they've got Eugenio Suarez after he had an awesome year and gets traded back to Seattle. That was a fun team that I think most people wanted to see in the postseason, but Texas is playing much better baseball. They're 8-2 over their last 10. They've got, good starting pitching right now, and that's even with Nathan Eovaldi and Tyler Mahle on the injured list. Patrick Corbin's been pitching really well for them. Merrill Kelly, a great underrated trade deadline addition, and Jack Leiter's been really good. So that front three, really good, deep bullpen. They're hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Jake Berger just got back healthy. Corey Seager's starting to look like himself a little bit. So I'm really in on the Rangers if they can get healthy and get down the home stretch here.
Yeah, I'm a big Wyatt Langford believer too, and he's kind of a weird case where we were just so ready for whatever his debut was going to look like, and I thought he'd blow away all expectations. That when he was fine, I think a lot of us were like, "Oh, okay, I guess, yeah, sure." And I think you tell a lot of people today, like, Wyatt Langford's actually been really good lately, and I think people will believe you that he's improved, but in reality, was pretty good last year. He had a 114 OPS plus 125 this year, almost 4 WAR last year, and almost 5 this year. So I think as a lay person, I would think like disappointing last year, better this year, but still not what we expected of him. Yeah. And in all honesty, pretty good last year too. Just a pretty good major league career to this point, and hopefully ascending. I'm with you. It feels like every Mariner season, August 1st
goes the same way.
August 1st, them into the playoffs and just stop thinking about it. And then you check the standings in early September and you go, wait a second, they're like a game up. What happened? And we're here again. And like I said at the start of the show, if you are a believer in the Texas Rangers being a sleeping giant, the Rangers at Mets next weekend is like a hell of a weekend. So no matter how the pitching prop will shake out, that is going to be massive.
I mean, the Rangers just I have to give so much credit to Bruce Bochy at the end of the day, because they've gotten to a game and a half back. Nathan Eovaldi's on the injured list. John Gray's on the injured list. Marcus Semien and Corey Seager are currently on the injured list. And these guys are just playing the best ball of the year that they've played so far. So we've been waiting all year long. Can the Rangers get healthy? And we're still kind of waiting for them to get healthy. But now here you are. It's September 3rd, and they're right in the mix. They're a game and a half out. So get your guys healthy, play a good couple weeks down the year. And if they're in the playoffs, nobody wants to see the Texas Rangers. I can guarantee you that.
They host Houston and Milwaukee this weekend and into next week after an off day. Then they have another off day to fly to Citi Field. And then they go to Houston after that with no off day in between.
Maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe the Rangers schedule doesn't want them in the playoffs. But.
Well, I mean, if they're in, they have earned it with this gauntlet, which is going to be obviously extremely watchable. And then they close with the Marlins, Twins, and Guardians. So the schedule gods sort of say like, all right, if you can survive that, if you can make the playoff field, we'll give you a breather afterwards. But as every baseball fan knows, as every MLB TV watcher like yourself knows, there is no such thing as a breather. If you're in the playoff field and the team you're facing isn't, they hate you. They're mad at you. They're going to play stronger and harder against you. And I'm just scanning the schedule for spoilers now as I check the remaining schedules. Is there any team that's out of the playoff field? And some of these call-ups help. And we're already seeing it in series like Pirates, Dodgers, and the Orioles visit to Fenway Park a couple weeks ago. Is there anybody that stands out where you're like, oof, I like this current version of this dead team, and I'm excited to see what they do down the stretch?
Yeah. I mean, the Orioles are like an obvious one that I think jump out, and they don't really play anybody that's on the brink of the playoffs. They've got another one with the Padres tonight, but Dodgers, Blue Jays, they've got a 4-game set with the Yankees. They've got 10 games against the Yankees in the final, week and a half of the season. They've got the Rays in there, and who knows what the Rays are going to look like over the next 3 weeks if they're still, floating around being in the mix in that last week of the season. But it's these teams to me that I think have underachieved that you have written off as a baseball fan or as a baseball team. And you realize when you get the wrong version of them that they still have some dudes in that lineup. And the Orioles still have some dudes in that lineup. The other team I feel that way about is the Atlanta Braves. Chris Sale's back with the Braves right now. If you have to go play the Braves on a day that it's a Chris Sale bump day, you're in trouble straight up, and they can still hit the ball out of the park. Ozzie Albies has heated up just a little bit over the last few weeks here. So take a look at the Braves schedule, see who they've got coming on. They play the Mariners, they play the Cubs, they play the Astros, they play the Tigers. So there's some opportunities for the Braves down the stretch too, to upset the apple cart. And those are the two teams that I would not want to see on my schedule.
That's the thing you really notice when you look at pitching probables around the league. There are not a lot of teams operating with just dead, decimated rotations at this point.
Yeah.
You are going to get a Chris Sale bump. If you're facing a bad team, you're going to get a bump day that scares you. And Chris Sale is a big one.
I mean, you've got Hurston Waldrop over there as well, like in what he's done in his 5-6 starts. You know, if you have to go and play a 3-game set, you're getting Spencer Strider, Chris Sale, and Hurston Waldrop. You're not loving going to Atlanta. And so I feel for all of those teams that might be sleeping on the Braves a little bit because they're floating towards the bottom of the standings and 62 and 77, worse than the Marlins. But I'd much rather play a Miami Marlins team who, if you look at their roster, you don't recognize half the names as being big leaguers versus what the Braves still have put together at the big league level.
Yeah, and of course that Marlins team with half big leaguers swept the New York Yankees, so got to feel great about
that. Didn't know that when I said that. That was not an intentional dig, but yeah, you know, I did look at the Marlins roster the other day and had a couple of moments. So,
yeah.
You know.
I think I had I saw them play at Citi Field earlier this year. It was the most anonymous I've ever thought a major league roster I've ever seen. But then, it happened to me. Colin the Miami Marlins got me. So it didn't feel quite so good.
You got Jacob Marcide. And then
I got Marcide so hard. That was his first series of his career.
Yeah.
And he hit bombs. They erased a 6-0 deficit in the first game. I don't want to talk about it. But the one that I'm looking at, and I know I mean the Orioles, yes, they stand out. They visit the Yankees. And they play with the Yankees that whole last week and a half, basically. So the opportunity is there if they want to tune up the rivalry knob. But how about a team, and they don't quite have the advantage of the bump days necessarily to scare you. The rotation is not their strong suit. But what about a team that went 13-11 in July, a plus 23 run differential that month, then 15-12 in August with a plus 26 run differential? And just happens to employ a guy who hit 4 homers in a game this year, and they faced the Boston Red Sox 6 times. That's the homeless A's. They've got home and road with Boston. Nick Kurtz on a half season long streak. Jacob Wilson is back. I weirdly love the amount that team fights. And Alex Cora announced today that Roman Anthony is down 4 to 6 weeks. The Red Sox have done a great job of rallying to the ball and being fearsome in a lot of different areas this year, but he also is probably the most irreplaceable player on that team. So eyes are open to say the least about what the A's could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a period in time, I don't know if it's still the case, but they were the only team in baseball with 4 guys at 20 home runs. They've got 4 guys at 23 plus home runs now, and 3 of them flirting with that 30 mark. So certainly a threat any night that you play the Athletics for them to, put up 12 runs on you. I think the pitching is pretty, whatever. You aren't super intimidated by any one of the A's pitchers that they're going to throw out there. But yeah, that's a lineup. That's a legitimate lineup. And I think that is one aspect of the A's that teams maybe not ready for until you get it up close and personal and get a crooked number up on that board in a lot of those innings.
Well, any playoff teams or non-playoff teams that scare any of you watching the show, listening to the show, join us in the Discord. Let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to this podcast on your favorite audio feed or anywhere, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Join us, the button below. And please subscribe to the Moonshot and read us on Baseball Insiders at fansided.com/baseball-insiders. Now, Sam, before we sign off, I want to give you a chance for a miniature rant. You hit me with an accidental, Yankees broadside, bringing up the Miami Marlins, but this is a more direct shot. We played each other this past weekend. It went about as I expected, but the White Sox are doing, in my opinion, they're still not a great team, but they're a not great team in the much better way year over year, where there are pieces, there are professional at-bats, there are guys taking development strides. People are giving Aaron Boone shit for not intentionally walking Lennon Sosa, who hit the game-winning home run. And it's like, I don't know, do you really want to intentionally walk him to get to Colson Montgomery, who's one of the best rookies in baseball? Like, the White Sox have a guy like that now. You can't just pitch around everybody to get to lefties because the lefty, is the best hitter on the team and one of the best.
And he hits lefties well, and he hits lefties too. So
yeah. So I think the right decision was made. Letting Sosa beat him. So the Yankees take 3 out of 4, but the fourth one they lose, and it ends on a pretty exuberant strike 3 from a closer who's just hyped up and happy to be there. Some Yankee fans did not enjoy this. I will say I'm not one of them. I think it's obviously fine to be happy about doing something well, but thoughts on the Yankee fans who came from Mike Vassell?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I got pretty fired up about this reaction online. It bothered me. And I think there's many layers as to why. So number one, I think let's look at the White Sox recently, because I don't blame anybody out there that hasn't been watching a ton of White Sox baseball in August of 2025. As we said, it's been a lot better. It's been a lot more fun to watch. The young core of hitters has been providing some optimism on the South side, but the bullpen has really started to just disintegrate. What was a very good bullpen for the first half of the year is starting to get shelled just about each and every time out. So much so that the White Sox almost blew like a 10-run lead against the Atlanta Braves one night. Then they did blow an 8-run lead against the Atlanta Braves the very next night and went from up 10-2 to losing the game 11-10. They had another huge loss against the Kansas City Royals, in which they were winning 4-2 and gave up 3 runs right at the end of the game and lost that game. And this Yankees series was just as frustrating for many different ways. It was the White Sox allowing the Yankees an extra out in the inning and then giving up a home run. The White Sox failing to hit with runners in scoring position time and time again when they had opportunities. And so this Sunday game was a real frustration game for White Sox fans. Really, they had just lost a game the day before in extra innings when Lenin Sosa comes all of 3 inches away from hitting a walk-off in the bottom of the 10th. That's foul. He strikes out. The Yankees win it in the 11th. All of this sort of frustration boils into this game. The White Sox hit a late home run. They take this lead. It's awesome. Mike Vassell enters the game. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Mike Vassell, 25-year-old, Rule 5 draft pick, was waived by the Tampa Bay Rays and claimed on waivers right before opening day, stuck with the Chicago White Sox. And by the way, grew up in Boston. He is a huge Bostonian, loved the Red Sox growing up. I think you know what that means. Didn't love the Yankees all that much. And he's pitching for the White Sox, pitching well, having himself a great rookie season with over 90 innings pitched in a 2.5 ERA. And he, protecting a 1-run lead for his team, has to go up against Aaron Judge, Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, Trent Grisham, right through the heart of the Yankees order. He punches out a red-hot Cody Bellinger on a beautiful pitch and pumps his chest. That's baseball right there, baby. That's emotion. That's what I want to see out of my players, whether you're in the playoff hunt and clinching a playoff race or 40 games under 500. Playing with that level of energy is how you start to turn things around. The lack of that energy is why the White Sox went 41 and 121 in a season, because guys didn't care like Mike Vassell cares. So I love to see it. White Sox fans love to see it. Yankees fans getting all butthurt about it, man. You know, get a hit. Let's go. Let's go, Bellinger. Drive it into the bullpen. Win the game. Otherwise, Mike Vassell has every right to celebrate just as much as a closer for the Yankees or any other good team does. He's playing for himself. He's playing for his teammates. I loved every second of it.
It's really hard to power rank things that I hate about the way people react online to sporting events, not just baseball these days. But one of the, no matter how you rank them, one of the top ones is when somebody gets really excited about beating a team and people flood the comments with, well, that was his World Series. Okay, so I guess nothing matters except for the World Series. You're supposed to hate your job when you do it well. Like, what are we doing, guys?
Now I will say White Sox are down 10-2 in this game, or if it's one of those Thursday, Friday games where they're getting blown out, Mike Vassell strikes out Cody Bellinger and is screaming and all hyped up. I'm not into that then. Like, your team is losing. Your team's getting embarrassed. You need to, have a little bit of pride there. If a guy in the NFL is scoring a touchdown when they're down 35-7 and he wants to do a touchdown dance, that's embarrassing. But a win is a win, and you should be playing to win the ball game every night, regardless of what your record is. So I loved to see it. I know that, not all Yankees fans were feeling that way, but there was a loud minority on Twitter that I think it was a pretty bad look for.
Yeah, they were loud. I saw them, and I'm glad that we were able to get that off your chest live on the show as well. That's what the Baseball Insiders is all about. It's all about a lot of stuff, but it's also all about that. Sam, thank you for joining me today,
Hey.
man. Anything you want to plug before we sign off as well?
Just, keep locking it in on the content, SouthsideShowdown.com. If you're curious ever about what's going on with those Chicago White Sox, you want to get a little bit of a pulse check, a lay of the land on how we're feeling about our Southsiders, SouthsideShowdown.com is the way to go. I'm on Twitter, Sam_Phalen as well. You see it on my my little lower third right down here. That's my tag.
Yeah, follow Sam, read Southside Showdown. Again, even if you're not White Sox curious, even if you don't think you are, there's plenty of content there for you. Sam, appreciate you joining me as always. Another hell of a Wednesday. We'll be right back here, 3:00 Eastern next Wednesday afternoon with Robert Murray back, I believe, unless he extends his vacation by another 3 weeks. But why would he? Because it's MLB TV watching season. So he should be here. Sam, appreciate it. Again, thanks everybody for joining and listening, and we'll see you back here next week.